We are back. Now we're going to talk about what is abuse and what are the different types of abuses.
Abuse is an act towards somebody that could hurt the person, affect the person, disable the person, and it could be physical abuse. Sexual abuse is under physical. It could also be verbal abuse, you know, when you cuss out people. I mean, in our place they say, stop abusing me.
Yeah.
You know? So, and you can have abuse of the child abuse, abuse of spousal abuse, domestic violence, and you can also have elderly abuse. So those are the three types of abuse that I know. I mean, I can go more if you want that. Maybe I'll let you ask more questions.
So you want to zero in on child abuse, because I feel like it's a hush topic within our community. So child abuse is defined as a problem arising from the intention of an adult to carry out an act that is detrimental to the physical, intellectual, emotional, moral, and social development of a child. Statistics show that an estimated 7.9% of men and 97% of women globally experience sexual abuse prior to the age of 18. The highest prevalence rate of child abuse geographically was found in Africa at the rate of 34.4%, and this is compared to Europe at 9.2%, America at 10.1%, and Asia at 23.9%. Okay, let's all swallow that, digest.
Did you say Asia 23?
Asia, yes.
And Africa is less.
34.4%. You know, globally.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take a look at a video clip of a recent girl by the name of Elizabeth Ochanya, who passed away at the age of 13 from sexual abuse.
The 13-year-old girl who was raped to death by her aunt's husband, Andrew Ogbuja, and his son Victor, has been laid to rest. The group also appealed to the Benin state government, Samuel Ortom, to immortalize the late Elizabeth Okonkwo-Ogbanjo as a martyr of child rape, sexual molestation, and abuse to discourage future acts of abuse, neglect, and exploitation of children. The group also called on the government to also compensate her family members to mitigate the trauma of the painful loss. The Benin State House of Assembly should also intensify efforts to pass the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, 2015. We also call for a thorough review of the judicial system to protect the rights of children against rape and sexual molestation. Meanwhile, a non-governmental organization, El Mila Heritage Support Foundation, LMHSF, has also called on relevant authorities to ensure justice for late Okonkwo-Ogbanjo. Barrister Jamilda Izam-Enika, the founder of LMHSF, during a press briefing on Friday, November 2nd, in Abuja, called on the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice to see to the quick and speedy enforcement of justice for the late Okonkwo. May her soul continue to rest in peace.
So the clip you just saw was of 13-year-old Elizabeth Ochanya, who was sexually abused since the age of 8 and passed on at the age of 13. Now, she was bedridden for 2 months prior to passing on, and her relatives, her mom and her dad, they didn't even know what was going on with her. And they pleaded and begged with her to tell them what has been going on. So for those of you who don't know the story, she was sent off to live with her cousin, who's an older woman, who's married and has children. So when the abuse started at the age of 5, it was by her male cousin. and who was caught by his sister caught him abusing Elizabeth. She went and told the parents, this is what my brother was doing to our cousin. So instead of the father, who's an educator, or her uncle, stopping this issue or problem, he then joined and started to abuse and rape Elizabeth. So father and son took turns with Elizabeth. They would drug her prior to raping her, and she was abused anally and vaginally. So she died of complications along with vesical vaginal fistula.
IVF.
Yes, so that was it's an abnormal opening between the bladder and the vagina.
Right.
So she died of complications. Now my question to you all is, why is this a continuing problem in our country?
Sexual abuse is a problem in our country, Nigeria, and also a problem here in America. It's a social problem. But I want to kind of elaborate on actually what sexual abuse means in the context of, children being abused, and also social reforms or what we can do about it. Like you already explained, sexual abuse is like when an adult or a caregiver allows a child that is under the age of 18 years old. You have to be in a caregiver role, meaning that you agree to care for the child, or like the uncle, he agreed to care for this child, and then you perpetrated act of sexual abuse. It could be like touching, it could be like, having sexual gratification when the child is doing anything, or it could even be like, touching the vagina area and everything. So in this particular instance, obviously the child was raped, so it was like a direct contact. And the problem is, there was a disclosure, because one of the elements of abuse is that, allowing an act to be committed or committing the act. So in this instance, there was no allowing an act, it was already committed, and she disclosed. But the problem is that, when she disclosed to the caregiver, they did not do anything about it. And the reason is that, most victims of sexual abuse, they usually will not talk. And because of being abused, these children have severe emotional problem. They are so fearful of going to other people to complain because of fear of repercussion or what can happen to them. I'm not really sure about what happened in this instance, but I think there's an element of fear. She disclosed to the wrong person, and the caregiver that was supposed to take care of the child did not do anything to stop the abuse, and the abuse continued. And you can relate this to what happens in America, because we've seen instances of children that have been abused for so many years, even by their parents. And believe it or not, the mothers, they will know about this abuse, but they still don't want to complain because they want to be in that relationship, or maybe they are already abused. So this now goes back to theory of human behavior, like the intergenerational theory of abuse, because people that abuse children probably were abused as a child, or they witnessed abuse when they were growing up. I don't know this situation, but more than likely, the cousin that was abusing her probably witnessed some acts of violence in the home, and that was why the father normalized the behavior, because he would have stopped it at that time. And another huge problem is that in Nigeria, we don't have a standard statutory regulation regarding child abuse and neglect. In America, it's a very severe situation. When any child is abused, there are people that are mandated reporters. They can call the hotline and investigation is started right away. And once child abuse is substantiated, meaning they have a finding, they gather evidence from the doctor, when they do the forensic interview, the disclosure of the child, police report, and the medical evidence that is gathered, the person is placed on a carry check, meaning you cannot work with children anymore. And then the case is reported to prosecutor's office, and they will take the case. Sometimes they go to jail and everything. But in Africa, unfortunately, there's no child reform, because I believe it's Bill Clinton. He had a child reform act where children that have been abused, they take it very seriously, and they can remove those children from their home and place them in foster home. But back home, we don't even have foster homes. Right. So there is nowhere you can place those children. We don't have the resources to even do that. and everything. So even if other family members are aware of the abuse that's going on, they can't even do anything about it, because remember, this abuse continued for a long period of time before this child suffered so many stuff going on. And here in America, they usually will evaluate the child and provide recommendation for like therapy that is trauma-based for a child that is exposed to abuse and neglect. But back home, you don't have any forensic evaluation, meaning you're speaking to like a therapist that is geared towards sexual abuse, not just a regular doctor, because it's not their specialty. But we don't have it back home, so this continued. And I don't believe we have like a child protection agency in Nigeria. I'm not really sure. We don't. So where are you even gonna make the referral? So assuming you know that he's doing it, who is gonna report it? And who is gonna apprehend him? And who is gonna investigate this? Who is gonna gather the information? And who is gonna evaluate the information and make sure it's correct so that like legal proceedings can happen? So lack of structure and corrupt government and not having the resources and not even having the awareness, not even having the social workers to go out in the home is a big problem. Because to solve this problem in Nigeria, I'm glad that they're talking about, compensating the victims, family and everything, but it's not the solution. We have to at least have the foundation of having a central screening agency that collects data and information about children being abused in order to even tackle it. Because if you don't even have the information, how can you even investigate it? I hope I didn't go too much.
Good point.
Well
And yeah, I'm glad you said, you mentioned corrupt government.
Yes.
Because it's not resources that we don't have.
Yeah.
We have the resources, Nigeria has the resources, but corrupt government.
Yes.
You mentioned the corrupt government, they don't want to do anything, they take the money and do some other things that are not necessary.
Correct.
And then sexually abusing a 5-year-old, isn't that mental illness?
Yeah. Started at the age of 8
sociopathic.
and continued till she was 13.
5-year-old?
And the crazy thing is that there are no laws in Nigeria that protect women and children.
This is very sad.
So,
Because even here in America, they with victims of domestic violence, they have like the Violence Against Women Act. I believe it was enacted in 2013. They usually have like shelters, like if somebody's been abused, they can refer you to shelters. They can provide like counseling services for you.
Yeah.
But back home, we don't have stuff like that, or like foster homes where you could place the children, or even like respite homes where they can be for a minute so that they can think of what's going on.
children even get abused in foster homes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. So abuse is everywhere, but it's really prevalent in Africa. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Why are parents too trusting of family members to watch their children?
Distant family counts as well.
So,
Everyone is your auntie and uncle, don't forget that.
right. So I think it goes back to our culture being a familial culture, not just the I forget the name, like your direct family unit, but extension of your family. Also, one of you guys mentioned when you don't have your basic needs met.
Yes.
Okay, so if you are in a family, your children, you cannot meet their basic needs. What is your next alternative? Well, you have a second cousin that is in Lagos that has some money, and you want to give your daughter or son a better opportunity to go to school, better schools. So, okay, why not? We are extended family culture. Let me send my daughter to my second cousin. And things happen there, unfortunately. And since the culture, I'm not even gonna say the culture, since the cycle of abuse is made to instill fear in you so you don't report what's happening, things like that happen.
Also the notion that it takes like a village to raise a child. Like I remember growing back home, like my parents, we lived like in a yard, we own the house, but then you have like tenants. And some of them, like, you know, they cannot afford childcare. So when they go into their market or to buy and sell, they will leave the children home and be like, oh, if you make sure that you give them the beans, and like, you know, I like to take care of the kids and everything. And it will be like 20 children. How can one person, I was like 10, adequately supervise 20 other children?
Yeah.
So one of these children could be abused, but their parents felt as though I was able to do it, but it's impossible.
Right.
And then my mom want me to do some errands for her. I will leave those kids and be like, you still here? Go back to the house and everything. So you can imagine like what those children are doing when they're not adequately supervised and everything. So that's another problem, because, you know, our people will always think that, oh, this person can do this for your child and everything. That's why, like in America, they're very, very careful about the definition of abuse. It has to be somebody in a caregiver role. Like assuming I'm home and you left the child without telling me anything. If anything happened to the child, I'm not really responsible because I was not placed in a caregiver role and everything. So, but back home, we neglect those things. You just leave your children and feel as though the neighbor can watch the child. I think that's why.
So, what are some warning signs to look out for in a child that's being abused? Because there's a recent case, and these are Nigerians, a 9-year-old boy who was sodomized by another man in the Nigerian community. And his mom paid close attention to the boy because she noticed he stopped eating. He started to thin out. So she started asking him questions like, what's going on with you? Why are you acting like this? And why do you look like this? That's when he broke his silence and said that I'm being abused by uncle such and such. So what are some other signs that parents can look out for
in kids?
in children?
Right, so you see, if you go back to what we said before, signs of depression. He wants to be alone. He doesn't want to do things he used to do. He's not eating. He's not sleeping well. He's not doing well in school. That one is very important. You know, he used to have A's. Now he's having C's and even worse. So those things would come in. And he doesn't want to go out with anybody. Oh, let's go to church. He doesn't want to go to church. He stays in his bedroom every time. So those are things emotionally that you see. Some of them too, you can catch at some stage. It's normal. 6-year-old, 5-year-old, you know, they can be playing with their private part, and it's normal. So you stop them from doing it outside. But when a 9-year-old, 10-year-old is doing that, you know, maybe it's because something was done to him or her, and he's enjoying it and he's replicating it inside his bedroom. So there are so many other signs, but these are some of them.
And also, I believe like you have to look also at the, you know, behavior aspect of it, because most of those children, they tend to act out. Like you see a child that is normally very happy, they will start acting out in school, they'll be hitting other kids and everything, like, you know, so that may be a sign that something is going on with the child. Or even some of them can regress and everything, like doing something that doesn't even make sense. Like there was a particular situation where there was she's like almost 16 years old, and for some reason, like, you know, she was bedridden, and her parents didn't even think, you know, it's appropriate to take her to the hospital. So when we kind of investigated the case, we found out that this child has been sexually abused, because, like, you know, she felt as though she could wear diapers, and she's 16. And then the investigator was asking her, like, you know, why would you feel comfortable wearing a diaper? And she said, my daddy made me wear a diaper. And then sometimes, you know, like when you're engaging them, you can find that information, because when you ask her, like, who are your friends? Like, who do you hang out with? I hang out with my father. Which normal 16-year-old hang out with their dad? Is like abnormal behavior. She doesn't have friends. She doesn't, you know, go into social media. Like, she doesn't really care of anything. Like, you know, she go on vacation with her dad. When you ask her who is on your phone contact list,
Her dad.
her father and the mother, like, so there's no social connection whatsoever. So sometimes, you know, like, you know, when you pay close attention, you might find out. And then even when parents abruptly maybe enroll their children from school, like, you know, take them out of school, there's a problem, because some of them, they don't want other people to, like, observe what's going on. Because this particular child, the father came to school and claimed that she was being bullied and said, you know what, I don't want you to attend this particular school because he's scared that this child might disclose to another adult. So sometimes, the teachers have to, pay attention when there's like a trend that is noticeable in a child.
Talking about teachers paying attention, sometimes they draw sexual things in class. So the issue might be, oh, he drew this, or she drew this. Drawing PP and something, and then they come to the pediatrician and say, this is what he drew in class. We want him referred. So that's one. And then another thing is what they do in class. They can touch other kids.
Yeah.
They do all that. So when the teachers pay attention, they'll pick out, and when you question them and interview them, they'll say it's because Uncle this did it to me.
Exactly.
Very well. So there's a recent study that was conducted. It's called ACEs for short. I'm sure a couple of you know about this, Adverse Childhood Experience Study, where they interviewed 17.5 thousand adults, asking them questions about their childhood, if they were abused sexually, emotionally, if they used substances, if they've experienced parental divorce, and other things. And based on how much you scored, they compared that to your health outcome. So studies have shown that childhood trauma caused by abuse affects health across a lifetime. How so?
So we've been talking about sexual abuse and haven't touched base on physical and emotional. And I think it's important for our community to really understand that there is a very thick line between physical abuse and discipline. And there's a very thick line between motivation and emotional abuse. So when you talk about how that can affect you long term, well, if you're told that you are nothing and you're an idiot and you won't amount to anything, and you're told this repeatedly for decades, then you begin to believe that. When you are beaten repetitively, you tend to get into relationships where you are beaten repetitively, and that's physical and emotional. So things that happen to you as a child when you're being molded, that is your experience, and that is the world as you know it. So if you grow up being treated a certain way, this is how you think the norm is. And you go then seeking relationships as you get older that are similar to the relationships that you have in your home or in your environment when you were younger. So this is how this perpetual cycle just continues and continues.
And to support what Dr. Njoku said, like the human behavior theory that you can attribute to that is like intergenerational, because like she said, what you experience growing up is what you kind of do when you're an adult. Because some children, statistics show that if they witnessed domestic violence, when they grow up, they tend to be abusive and everything. And then some women that witnessed their mothers being beat when they were young, they felt as though it's normal for a male to beat them up and everything. So that's the problem. So it becomes a generational thing when people felt as though this is normal. So if this is what they experienced growing up, and then in their adulthood, they will now have those negative behavior that will impact their life, impact the amount of money they will make, impact their well-being, and overall, they might not really thrive as children, and then as adults, they might have health implications because of what they experienced growing up.
Very well. And might I add that exposure to adversity affects the brain and body development of a child. It also affects the development of hormones and their immune system.
Why are parents encouraged to do upon finding out when a child is being abused, what should parents do? When they find out that their child is being abused, what should parents do?
You have to report. You have to report it. You take the child away from there and then seek help. it depends on what kind of abuse, right? If it's sexual abuse, you have to go there. That child might have contracted HIV, VVF, vaginal fistula, and other forms of STDs. So first you have to get medical help. Let them examine that child, find out if that child is normal, and of course, psych help, but most of all, first take that child away in terms of when we're talking about sexual abuse. And of course, if it's physical abuse, same thing, you take the child away. Depending on who is abusing the person, you take the child away from that so that it doesn't continue. Because you can have a lot of illnesses that you can't even cope with from those abuse. We see skull fracture, we see a lot of things that would really adversely affect that child. And remember, kids' brain grow most in their first 2 years of life. So I've seen skull fracture in a 6-month-old. So I mean, that's it. Take them away first.
Yeah, he's very correct. And if it's a child that is very verbal, like a child that you can communicate with, I think you have to at least engage the child and see where the child is coming from, because there are information that you can gather, like collateral information that can even help you to figure out what to do. And he mentioned reporting it is very, very crucial. Why do you want to report this? Because there are some level of abuse that you cannot even diagnose yourself, or you cannot treat, because law enforcement have to be involved. Like if a child is severely sexually abused, the prosecutor's office have to be notified. Why? Because they have to start investigation. And the reason why you want them to start the investigation is because there's a technique that they utilize when interviewing these children. Like you and me, we don't have that skill. They might use like finding words. They will use like a picture and make sure that the child is even able to identify their body parts. Why? Because some children don't even know what is a normal kiss or touch that makes them feel comfortable or touch that makes them feel uncomfortable. So you want to report it to the proper authority so that the right investigation is going to be conducted. And in case of sexual abuse, you want to report it. Why? Because you want that child to be taken to like a forensic evaluator so that they can do a biopsychosocial evaluation to determine not just whether it's true or not, or whether to make a finding, or whether to substantiate it. You want to make sure that they recommend appropriate services. Why? You need a service that can take care of the trauma that the child already experienced. So that's why it's very crucial that not only do you remove the child from the abuser, you report it to the right authority, because parents, most of them, don't have knowledge of childhood. They don't even know what to do. But reporting it to the right people will now provide community resources that can tackle that problem.
I did my training for forensic psychiatry at UPenn. So I've come across cases where one case just stands out. This girl was 9 years old, and she was sexually abused by her brother. And after doing interview with him, interviewing the parents and the sister, I come across that the boy himself was sexually abused by a soccer coach. So why it's so important to report? Because now we have 2 cases where we thought there was just the 9-year-old girl. It's the 16-year-old boy as well that was being abused. And you see the cycle repeating itself.
So children abusing children.
Yes.
And also you can save other kids from being abused by the same person. That's why, like Ipe said, you have to make the prosecutor's office aware of this. If this person is prosecuted, you save other kids.
Right.
And another important thing is that, when child sexual abuse is being substantiated, they put them in a carry check, child abuse registry index, meaning that that particular individual is not authorized to work with children. Sometimes, the judge can even issue an order like no contact with victims under the age of 18. Very important, because at least they cannot victimize other children, they cannot be other perpetrators. And the reason that you also want to report it is that those individuals sometimes, like I said, They could be children that they could be abused as children. They need services. They could need like batterers intervention services. They might need like anger management. So it's very crucial that like, you know, you make sure that like they are reported. Mega law offenders, like, you know, children that are like abused, you want to make sure that they place them like in the mega law offender list. Why? So that like, you know, if there's any reason why they want to like work like in daycare centers or stuff like that, they will be stopped from doing that. Like they can't even work in schools or work with like young children. Yes.
Even
in
McDonald's,
Ghana,
if you're on the sex offender registry, you can't even work anywhere that someone under the age of 18 is going to be. McDonald's, the mall, Sears, it doesn't matter.
So it's very, very crucial. That way, like, you know, and then they have like an obligation to like call their parole officers or like their probation officer. That way, like, they're checking on them. And, you know, if they have issues, they might even recommend additional services for them. So not only are we like protecting the children, but we're also helping them, because you don't want to like have people that are running around that like, you know, predators are like, you know, that are committing all these acts against kids, and so because it affects the community as a whole. That's why I look at it, because if a child is abused, the parents suffer the problem, the trauma, and then the child and eventually everybody is affected.
It can turn to an epidemic. It can become a public health, you know, issue too.
Which Nigeria is facing as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next section is called healing. How do we heal as a people and as a nation? So what I'm gonna ask of each of you is to give us ways to cope and to heal mentally as a people. And in regards to child abuse, how do we move forward, and how do we rectify things, and how do we heal?
Okay, for child abuse, like I said, you know, unfortunately in Nigeria, we have a long way to go. Like, it's not something that we cannot do, but I believe as a nation, what we have to do is at the minimum to like, you know, speak to our legislators and our policymakers. They have to like initiate child protection agencies in Nigeria. It's very important. Like the video clip that we watched, like abuse occurs anywhere. It doesn't matter like, you know, the age, the how wealthy you are, or the race. It's like global problem. It's a social problem. So we start by like, you know, setting up like, you know, agencies that will protect children. And we also like, you know, fund those agencies and everything. And then we make sure that like people are responsible. And not only that, I believe like here in America, they have perform care services where families access behavioral health services. We now, you know, don't stigmatize like mental health. We can set up like, you know, a perform care agency where people can actually access real-time therapy services for their family. And not only that, you know, we that in America, we can go back home and create public awareness, educate our people, start with your neighbors, like, you know, people that you know. We can do like health fair and all that stuff and let people know what's going on. And also like our law enforcement, they have to be on board, because I believe it's a collaboration. Like if the family, they reported and law enforcement is not on board, people won't take it serious. There won't be like serious intervention. They know there's no consequences. So we have to make sure that our law enforcement in Nigeria, they are aware of what's going on and are able to prosecute these offenses. I believe that, you know, when we do that, it's going to help us a long way. And of course, you know, therapy services for families and intervention. I believe that, you know, if we actually put those things in place, it will be like a baby step in accomplishing what we have to do to make sure that our vulnerable population, the children, are not, you know, severely abused. Thank you.
So he said it all, you know, but I'm going to hit on the education piece, because the trader out there in Obuete market in Nigeria doesn't believe at 25 that sleeping with a 16-year-old is wrong. They don't. You know, so we have to make them understand that that's wrong. And we have to set up systems that will report these things. You know, we have to not do the no snitching law, you know, because that's my brother, that's my cousin, I'm not going to tell. We have to tell, because you don't know who you're protecting this person from. You know, you're protecting this child again from this person who might still go ahead and do the same thing. Then also, not because I'm a doctor, not because I'm a pediatrician, not because I'm a preventive medicine specialist, but also because I actually believe that doctors should be paid well. They should be paid well and also punished too when they don't report. Right? But first you have to make them stay in Nigeria and practice.
Yeah.
They're all out. I just came back from El Paso this weekend. My friends had, I was telling you, my friends had these Southwestern Nigerian physicians. Do you know how many of my classes, it was a class reunion. They all leave, they all want to run out. Like Dr. Njoku said, we have to make them stay and stop the brain drain. Without those doctors helping us, we can't get anywhere. So that's my take.
Thank you.
Just education. You can't heal if there's no acknowledgement about what the problem actually is. Education. If you want to really target school-age children, you know, you have to involve parents and caretakers. There has to be talking about abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. Don't forget emotional abuse. Has to be education on it.
And for those who do acknowledge having a mental issue, such as anxiety or suffering from depression, how are they supposed to cope with their mental illness?
Seek a specialist, because a specialist will know how to treat. You know, you don't want to go to anyone that's going to stigmatize you. And education. We keep saying education. That's like the key word because it's true. If there's so much ignorance about something, you're never gonna get to the bottom of how we're gonna fix or heal something that you don't know what it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Barrister Wapo, Dr. Achebe, and Dr. Njoku. And thank you all for watching Issues That Matter. Thank you, Aso Rock, for having us. I'm your girl, Elizabeth.
Your boy Toast, the baddest.
And remember, we see you. I see you.